In this video up here, I built a beginner's investment portfolio. Now, it's getting a lot of heat in the comments. Some people pulling it apart saying it's rubbish, I don't know what I'm talking about. Some people actually saying it's decent and should provide good gains over the next 10, 20 years. So for the first time, I'm going to ask Claude what they think about my portfolio. But before I do that, I've got to turn Claude into an experienced and professional financial investment advisor. And the way to do that is to build a solid prompt. In this video, I'm going to ask Tom, our co-founder, who is also an AI expert, who has built a business using Claude, how to build a prompt to turn Claude into an experienced professional investment advisor. We're going to go through each step so you can do the same thing and cut and paste the same prompt. Let's see what Tom has to say and the 5-step process he uses when I caught up with him earlier today. If you watch the channel, you'll know that we set up a beginner's investment portfolio. And some of the comments we've had in the chat and underneath have been a bit quite controversial. Some people have said, oh, there's too much overlap here. Some people said, don't listen to this guy, he has no idea what he's talking about. You're always gonna get these kind of comments. So that's what's really prompted us to take our, what we believe is a solid beginner portfolio for 2026 and have it audited by Claude. So that's really what we're here today, is to look at that, take on board some of those comments and give it to Claude to see what he thinks. But before we do that, you and I both know that the prompt is really important. Why do you think a prompt or building the prompt is so important? Why is it we can't just go be lazy and say, oh, just review my portfolio, please?
Yeah, because a financial advice is personalized. If it was generic, you would only need, a financial advisor would only need to put one piece of recommendation to all their clients. It depends where you're domiciled. It depends if you're looking to retire in 5 years. The advice I give to my granddad is going to be different to advice I'd give to my kids. So it has to be personalized. It has to take into consideration risk tolerance. Some people will see their portfolio to go down by 1% and they'll be going crazy. They can't deal with the lost money. And for them, they can't ride volatility. So it has to be personalized to what your goals are and your risk tolerance.
Okay, so we're going to go through now 5 questions that we've come up with to prompt Claude before he even goes anywhere near your portfolio. So the first question is, what is this money for and when will you need it? And we just touched on that, but why is that important? Just to think, we'll go through each one quite quickly, but why is that one so important?
Timing is, you can't time the market, but there are indicators that maybe a certain time scale is less or more favorable depending on what asset you're looking to invest in. My example would be gold at its peak, and you think, okay, well, I'm looking to withdraw this money in 12 months time. I just want to keep it somewhere safe or maybe get a small return. If you're investing your whole portfolio in gold at its peak value, it's very probable that it won't continue to grow, or it might not continue to grow.
Yeah, so I suppose it depends whether you're holding for 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, for retirement, for something else. That context is important. Now, when we put the beginner's portfolio together, I got a lot of stick about the overlap of the All World Fund and the S&P 500, bearing in mind that 60% of the All World Fund was in the S&P 500. Now, my view is that if you overlap 2 funds that are both performing well, I don't see the problem. There is duplication, there is overlap, but if they are performing well, then great. But also there is circumstances when one may or may not perform. So I thought that kind of diversification was fine, albeit you could argue it's not diversified. So the next question is, what exactly do you hold? Now, why would that matter, Hammer?
Yeah, it does matter. So I would say it depends on the individual. If you've got millions and millions of pounds, your main objective is really to preserve wealth, and you're not necessarily going to risk your wealth on a higher return. The main thing is preserving your wealth and a small growth, sustainable growth. And you want diversification across different industries, where it could be different industries, different countries, where you're not reliant on one sector. So if you're too reliant on tech, it's very volatile and it could jeopardize a large amount of your portfolio. It depends on where you are in your life. So, for example, pensioners and their pensions, typically very low risk bonds, steady funds, and they're not typically aggressive in the tech sector for that reason. Whereas if you're a young and you've got time on your side and can afford risk, then going heavier on the tech sector, and the American tech sector in particular, you could see tremendous gains.
Especially when we've got such a good track record. Now, we have to say, obviously, past performance doesn't guarantee future results. But over the longer term time horizons, it will perform. The markets tend to recover over long periods. So the third prompt is, how would you actually behave in a 30% drawdown? Why is that important?
It's super important. I think it's actually characteristic of having experience in the markets. When you're new in the markets, you might be more tempted to sell because you're scared. Whereas people, as they have more experience in their investing lifetime, what they'll tend to see is that everything's up for sale. Everything's a discount. So it's important to know how you would react, because again, being heavy in the American tech sector, there are going to be periods of time where it's going to drop by 20 to 30% just when there's a mini crash. But if you've got the risk tolerance and you've got cash aside, a lot of people look at it as a sale, because history has suggested that every 5 years there is, tends to be some kind of mini crash, but it has always recovered. It's all about risk tolerance.
Yeah. And everyone's individual. Everyone's got different risk tolerances.
Everyone's got different attitude to risk, whether they're risk averse or risk seeking. We might be quite similar. I'd probably suggest that we're both risk seeking. Whereas I know plenty of
Bitcoin portfolio.
Yeah, well, if you're that bullish in Bitcoin, then you're risk seeking. But as you get older, and if you've got tens of millions of pounds and you're older, then you're more about preserving risk.
Number 4 is, what constraints does it need to respect? Now, this is kind of a boring thing, because we assume that everyone has a stocks and shares ISA, but the numbers are very different. 1 in 5 people in the UK use a stocks and shares ISA. So we know that whilst to you and I, that the wrappers and the fees and the constraints are quite boring, they're actually quite important to people. Why is it important for Claude to understand this, Hammer?
Yeah, so the constraints they're incredibly important, and it depends on your salary, what you take home. There's a financial trap between £100,000 and £120,000 income from your salary, whereby you can effectively pay upwards of a 60% income tax. You pay the maximum, one of the highest tax thresholds, and you also start to lose your personal allowance. So in that, if you're earning £105,000, it can make sense to put that into a SIP or put money towards your pension. But also, you have to look at the wider landscape. So if you've got a general investment account, you've got a SIP, and you've got an ISA, you want to know where to deploy capital in which account, which is most tax efficient. Outside of that, each vehicle has their own benefits, but Claude is great at doing the maths for you without having to try and figure out.
This last one now is quite important, because if I'm sat with a financial advisor in a room, he can see my face, he can read my body language. There's so much you get from a personal meeting that you won't get from Claude. Why is this last question, what do you want back? Have you told it to push back and challenge? Why is that so important in asking to audit my investments?
Yeah, no, that's really good. So my experience using AI, it's very rarely does it tell me I'm stupid and to rethink stuff. It has happened, but very rarely. So when you're looking at your portfolio, you need to really get Claude to critique itself, and also push back to what is the counter argument, what is being devil's advocate, why are the answers that it's come back with the wrong answer. And what it does, if you use AI a lot, you will find that you'll get an answer from Claude, and you question it and say, I don't think that's quite right, or you can't email that to someone and it says, yeah, good point, good catch. So definitely have a couple of rounds of interrogation with Claude and yourself, because what you'll find is it will dig a little deeper, and it will only with your human thought and being, like I said earlier, being street smart, that will carry over into the final answer, and you'll get the best out of it.
Final question for you, Hamar. I know you obviously you live in Claude and AI. And I know you've asked Claude to look at your portfolio. Has Claude ever given you advice that you've ignored, and why?
Yeah, it has given me advice. Claude and AIs generally act as the aggregate of the internet, and I don't agree with a lot of the stuff on the internet and have different views on stuff. But there's a lot of financial advice out there given by people that want something very low risk, secure, that's not going to get them in trouble. Claude had said maybe your portfolio is a little bit too aggressive, or it's a little bit too weighted in particular sectors, or maybe actually I wouldn't suggest putting loads of capital in that commodity or ETF right now. And I've sort of taken a different view and thought, I think I'm right. It doesn't always pay off, but you have to have your own conviction. Otherwise, if Claude's giving the same advice to everyone, or you're getting the same advice as the aggregate of the internet, then you're going to get the same results.
I also find that Claude has a hard time being early to market because it only relies on information that's published, legal, compliant. And sometimes being early is relying on information that isn't public, that isn't necessarily been obtained legally. And I don't mean breaking the law, but I mean finding insider trading, or being part of a company, or being in a meeting that will affect share price and share decisions. And ultimately one that hasn't been authorized yet. But, sometimes you could argue that's where money's made in some occasions.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really good point. I'd sort of summarize and say, Claude is an amazing tool, and when reviewing your portfolio, it's going to do a very good job. It's not going to beat the market, typically speaking. A lot of famous investors and fund managers never beat the S&P over a long period of time, and that's all you have to know.